そなた、一人か。
Have you ever felt the coldness of a blade that cuts not only flesh, but also deciphers destiny? The Sekiro anime trailer that just rocked the internet is more than just an action spectacle. It's a reminder that Ashina is dying. Beneath the stunning visuals, there's the scent of blood, rust, and prematurely fallen cherry blossoms. Welcome to Cinegame, the cinematic story game that will turn back time to the Sengoku era, but not the Sengoku era we know or the one you read about in history books. This is a world where myths creep between snowy cliffs, and immortality is not a blessing, but a rotting curse. Today, we'll dive into the entire chronology of Sekiro, from the cries of a baby on the battlefield to the final battle under the silver moon. Get your snacks ready. Let's begin. Enjoy.
Blood of the Dragon's Legacy. The tragedy and morality of the shinobi. Chapter 1. The Beginning. The tragic history of Ashina.
Ashina's origins are not just political history, but the story of a land that refuses to die.
Land of Water Worshippers, the ancient heresy.
Long before the Ashina clan came to power, this region was inhabited by people who worshipped the Fountenhead waters. They believed that the water flowing from Mount Congo brought eternal life. The land of Ashina naturally contains supernatural elements due to its high location in the mountains, where the divine dragon, aka the Dragon of the West, eventually landed. This is why this land is both sacred and cursed.
The era of oppression, the outcast clan.
The Ashina clan was originally an indigenous group deemed heretical by the central government, the Interior Ministry, or the Tokugawa clan in the original history. They were forbidden to practice their water rituals and forced to live in poverty and oppression for decades. Imagine a people stripped of their faith, forced to live in the shadows of their own sacred mountains. The Ashina weren't just rebels, they were a dying culture fighting for their right to exist.
The Ashina Rebellion.
About 20 years before the game's story begins, a great war known as the Ashina coup broke out. Amidst the chaos of the Sengoku era, Isshin Ashina, a peerless swordsman, led a bloody rebellion to reclaim his ancestral homeland. Isshin didn't fight for politics or absolute power. He fought out of love for his homeland. Using his pragmatic Ashina-style sword techniques, winning at all costs, he successfully routed the central government and established an independent nation of Ashina.
The irony of Ashina's glory.
Ashina was built on blood, but ironically, it began to crumble as Isshin aged. Without Isshin's supernatural powers, Ashina stood no chance against the Interior Ministry's military technology, which had already begun to utilize cannons and firearms. This is a symbol of modernity destroying tradition.
Chapter 2. The Nameless Kid and the Iron Code.
This story begins not with the sword Kusubimaru, but with a child amidst a field of charred corpses. A boy stood holding a broken blade. He didn't cry, he just stared blankly. Uklo Zaman Usui, known to us as the Owl, saw potential in that emptiness. He took the child in and named him Wolf, forged him into a killing tool, a shinobi. This is where the Iron Code was instilled. The Master's orders are absolute. Your life is not your own. Years later, Wolf was tasked with guarding Kuro, the Divine Heir. Kuro was no ordinary child. Within his blood flowed the dragon heritage, the power to live forever. But in the land of Ashina, this power became a target. Genichiro Ashina, the desperate leader, sought the blood of his master to save his land from the Interior Ministry's invasion. Wolf failed to protect his master. His arm was cut off, and his master was kidnapped. In truth, Genichiro was not born with the blood of the Ashina royal family. He was born to a commoner family. After his mother's death, he was adopted by the Ashina clan. Genichiro felt a deep debt to the land of Ashina. Unlike his grandfather, Isshin, who loved battle for the sake of the sword, Genichiro loved Ashina as an entity that must be preserved, no matter the cost. This is why Isshin's adopted grandson was willing to cast aside his humanity. He saw Ashina as a sacred heritage that would soon be destroyed. For him, the end justifies the means, even if it meant cursing the entire land with dragon blood.
Chapter 3. The butterfly burn in the flames.
Wolf awakens in an ancient temple. His missing arm has been replaced with a complex wooden mechanism, a shinobi prosthetic. The sculptor, a mysterious man who continually carves Buddha statues filled with rage, bears witness to Wolf's reawakening. Through the shinobi world's network of information, Wolf learns where his master has been taken, to the Hirata estate. The estate is in chaos apparently, due to an attack by warriors using a flawed form of the water of immortality known as rejuvenating waters. Amidst the flames, he finds his mentor, the owl, dying. He tells him that his master is in the burning warehouse. He found Master Kuro, but he also encounters the Lady Butterfly, one of his mentors. Lady Butterfly, Uwanari, is more than just an initial boss. She is the personification of the cruelty of the shinobi world. Amidst the flames that engulfed the Hirata estate, Wolf faced not just an enemy, but his past. Lady Butterfly stood there, not as a frail old woman, but as a ghost from Usui's forest. "You've grown, son of Owl," she said coldly. Those words weren't praise, but rather a death sentence. For a shinobi, affection only exists at the tip of a sword. Lady Butterfly was a veteran shinobi who studied in the Illusion Forest, also known as Usui's Forest. This forest, known as the home of crows, Mist Raven Forest, is filled with a deadly mist of illusion. It was there that she mastered the techniques of summoning illusions and fighting with thin, almost invisible threads. She wasn't just a physical fighter, but a master of mind manipulation. Lady Butterfly was one of Wolf's teachers, along with Owl. When Wolf was a child, Lady Butterfly taught him agility techniques. Ironically, at the Hirata estate, Wolf had to use these techniques to kill her. It's a classic student surpasses master theme, shrouded in tragedy. Why was she at the Hirata estate? She was working with Owl to kidnap Kuro in order to obtain the power of the dragon heritage. She wasn't just a guard, she was the executor of the Ashina clan's treasonous plot. The battle in the burning warehouse was Wolf's final test. Would he follow orders, perhaps taught by Butterfly, or his duty to protect his master? Her weapon, a needle and thin thread, symbolized the fragility of human life in the Sengoku era. He fought as if dancing on a thread, demonstrating that a shinobi needed not brute strength, but deadly precision.
Chapter 4: The Memoir of the Living Fortress, the legendary General Gyoubu Oniwa.
The journey to Ashina Castle wasn't just a rescue mission. It was our introduction to a world gone mad. We saw chained giants, a giant white snake, and then an epic encounter with Gyoubu Oniwa at the castle gates.
My name is Gyoubu Masataka Oniwa!
His shout wasn't just a bluff or a mere self-introduction. It was a declaration of sovereignty. As the main gatekeeper, his duty wasn't just to kill the enemy, but to ensure that no intruders, including the Interior Ministry clan, could set foot in Ashina Castle. He was a living fortress, willing to defend every inch of his land with his life.
From bandit leader to legendary general.
Behind his iconic arena-shaking shout lies the story of the loyalty of a former bandit who transformed into Ashina's strongest spear. Gyoubu the Demon, also known as Gyoubu Masataka Oniwa, was not born a samurai. Once, he was the leader of a feared bandit group in the Ashina region. He was defeated by Isshin Ashina in a remarkable duel. Rather than kill him, Isshin, impressed by his strength, offered Gyoubu a position as general. Gyoubu accepted, and from then on, his loyalty to the Ashina clan never wavered.
The spear and the horse.
Because his horn spear was broken during the rebellion, he was gifted General Sugen Tamura's Isshin Ashina crossblade, his rival's signature weapon, which he modified into a massive spear called the Cross Spear. However, the real star is Onikage, his mighty steed. Gyoubu and Onikage are one. They symbolize the unstoppable power of cavalry. Tragically, Onikage perished alongside his master at the castle gates, symbolizing the demise of the classic samurai cavalry era. If you like it, please support me by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you.
Chapter 5: Dragonrot and the Price of Immortality.
Why is everyone so obsessed with Kuro? This is where Sekiro's lore gets dark. The divine child's power comes from the divine dragon who came from the west. However, immortality in Sekiro's world is parasitic. When Wolf dies and rises again, he doesn't create life, he steals it from those around him. This is Dragonrot. Their breaths become labored, their coughs turn bloody. The more you fail, the more people suffer. This is FromSoftware's philosophical way of saying, no victory comes without a cost.
You fought bravely on my behalf. I cannot throw away such loyalty. Loyal wolf, take my blood and live again.
The Legend of the Divine Dragon. In Fountenhead Palace, Worf discovers an ancient record detailing the origins of the dragon from the West. This is key to explaining why Sekiro's world has become so corrupted. It's called the Dragon from the West because this dragon isn't native to Japan, Ashina. In the context of Japanese history and culture at the time, West referred to China or the mountainous regions of mainland Asia. This dragon is a migratory celestial entity. It brought the power of the dragon heritage to Japan in search of a peaceful abode, but its presence permanently altered Ashina's spiritual ecosystem. Fountainhead Palace, an infected paradise. The dragon resides at the highest peak of Ashina, Fountainhead Palace. The water flowing from the dragon's abode is holy, yet deadly. This water is the origin of the rejuvenating waters. This dragon doesn't grant immortality for free. It is a parasitic god. The immortality he grants actually steals the life essence from humans and the surrounding nature. That's why the nobles of Fountainhead Palace, palace nobles, look like life-sucking monsters. The divine dragon is depicted as a one-armed dragon, similar to wolf, fused with a large tree. This symbolizes that the dragon has deeply rooted itself in the land of Ashina. Because it has become one with the land, removing its power, severance, requires physically harming it with the mortal blade. Why is this dragon defective? If you notice during the boss fight, the divine dragon is missing an arm. This is a profound lore detail. Many theories suggest that the missing arm represents the Everblossom branch stolen by Owl years ago from Ashina Castle. Therefore, the power of immortality flowing into Kuro and Wolf is also defective, causing Dragonrot in others. High above the clouds, where the sky meets the peaks of Ashina, there resides a deity in exile. He is not of this land. He came from the west, bringing the promise of eternal life wrapped in cherry blossom petals. But this god didn't come to save us. He came to take root. The divine dragon is the reason why Ashina is both beautiful and so corrupted. Every time Wolf rises from the dead, he isn't borrowing the power of a god. He's stealing the breath of those he loves. This immortality is a cycle of theft that can only be broken by one means: the dragon's tears. As Wolf absorbed the dragon's memories, he realized a bitter truth. The majestic figure before him was not a victor, but a refugee from the West, trapped in his own immortality. Those memories whisper that immortality isn't about living forever, but about losing humanity bit by bit, until all that remains is a bloodthirsty rot.
Chapter 6: Death Duel on the Roof Castle.
At the top of Ashina Castle, we once again confront Genichiro. Genichiro isn't just a student of the traditional Ashina sword style, he's a student of Tomoe, a mysterious woman from the Okami clan, Fountainhead Palace. That's why Genichiro can wield the power of lightning, a technique considered heretic or impure by the pure sword school. This shows that he's willing to abandon his humanity and his pride as a samurai for power. Because Genichiro knows the Ashina military won't win against the Interior Ministry's invasion, he turns to mysticism. He consumes the sediment of the rejuvenating waters. This prevents him from dying naturally, but his body rots spiritually. Notice the second phase of his fight. When he undresses, his skin is pale and covered in lightning burns. He's a living corpse driven by will. This rooftop fight isn't just about technique, but a clash of ideologies. Genichiro does everything for the country. Wolf does everything for duty. Genichiro sees Kuro not as a human being, but as a battery or resource to keep Ashina standing. This is what fuels the eternal conflict between him and Wolf.
Yes. Indeed.
Chapter 7: The Journey to Find the Severer of Immortality.
After defeating Genichiro, Kuro no longer wants his power abused. He desires severance, the severer of immortality. Wolf must find the ritual ingredients, the white flower from the deepest valley, the fragrant stone from the cursed village, and the mortal blade. This section highlights both the beauty and horror of Sekiro. Senpou Temple, which should be a sacred place, has instead become a horrific human laboratory. The monks there have abandoned Buddhism in pursuit of immortality from the infested. Furthermore, Worf also finds the heirloom weapon he seeks in this temple, the Red Fushigiri, or Red Mortal Blade, which is said to be able to break the chains of immortality that originate from the Divine Dragon. This sword is believed to be a sacred artifact and originates or has a direct connection to the Fountenhead Palace. It was created as a ritual instrument to interact with the power of the dragon's heritage. It is also called the Gracious Gift of Tears, so named because its original function is to collect the tears of the divine dragon in the divine realm. Without this sword, the immortal severance ritual is impossible. This sword, hidden for centuries by evil monks, bears a terrible curse. According to the divine child of rejuvenation who gave it to Wolf, anyone who dares to draw it from its sheath will die instantly. Wolf can use it only because he possesses the power of resurrection from Kuro. They keep the sword so that no one could break the artificial immortality they had created through the infested. In Mibu Village, the people were addicted to sacred water that corrupted their souls. We saw the despair of humanity when they feared death.
Chapter 8. The Father's Betrayal, the Shadow of Deceit.
And then came the most crucial moment. The owl returned to his lair. His adoptive father appeared and demanded adherence to the Iron Code. If Isshin was the sun, then Owl was the black hole. Owl cared nothing for Ashina. For him, the chaos of war was an opportunity to steal Kuro's dragon heritage power so he could rule forever. He didn't pick Wolf up on the battlefield out of pity, but because he saw the perfect tool. He implanted the Iron Code as a psychological chain to ensure Wolf would never disobey. His dirty fighting style, employing smoke bombs, poison, firecrackers, and even feigned surrender, was the true definition of a shinobi. No honor, only victory. The shadow that raised this wolf was a lie. To him, his adopted son is merely a pawn on the chessboard of eternity. If Isshin is the crashing wind, Owl is the deceptive mist. On the roof of Ashina Castle, Wolf must choose. Will he die as his father's tool, or live as a knight to protect his master? Here, the player and Wolf must choose. Stay true to the code that raised you, or be loyal to the human you protect, Kuro. If you choose Owl, you become Shura, a demon who only lusts for blood. This is where Emma's resilience is tested.
Chapter 9. The Tragic Healer.
Emma is a character who provides soul and humanity amidst the rust and blood-soaked world of Sekiro. Like Wolf, Emma is a product of the brutality of the Sengoku War. She was found by Isshin Ashina on a corpse-strewn battlefield holding a rice ball. Emma was then raised and became the proud disciple of Dogen, the legendary Ashina healer, with Isshin Ashina's permission, of course. This is why she possesses both extraordinary medical knowledge and close ties to the Ashina ruling family. Emma is the one who gives Wolf the gourd seed and helps Wolf heal Dragonrot. She is the only character who genuinely cares for Wolf's mental and physical well-being without any political agenda. Their relationship is built on a silent trust. She views Wolf not as a killing tool, but as a lost human being.
The Blade of Gentleness, Emma's secret side.
Emma is more than just a healer. Under Isshin Ashina's tutelage, she trained in advanced sword techniques. However, she vowed to wield her sword only for one reason: to slay the demon. Shura. Isshin Ashina trained her specifically so that if Isshin or anyone else were to ever turn into a Shura, Emma would be the one to end their suffering.
The final sacrifice, Shura ending.
The most heartbreaking moment for viewers comes in the Shura ending. Emma must stand against Wolf on the castle roof. She fights not out of hatred, but out of a moral obligation to stop the monster awakening within Wolf. Her death at Wolf's hands is the turning point where Wolf truly loses his soul. In a world obsessed with immortality, Emma is a reminder of the fragility of life. She is not a warrior thirsting for victory, but a healer forced to grasp steel. When she gazes at Wolf, she sees not just a shinobi, she sees a boy she once knew beneath the cherry blossom tree. Yet beneath her gentleness lies a deadly oath. She learned to wield the sword not to conquer nations, but to extinguish the flames of Shura. When Wolf chose darkness, Emma was the last light standing in his way. Her death is not simply defeat, but the final loss of the conscience of the Ashina world. Imagine a sword that never satiates, a soul that no longer knows pain, thirsting only for the screams of its enemies. This is Shura. He is not a monster born of darkness, but a monster born of our own choices. When Wolf plunged his blade into Emma's heart, something inside his broke. He no longer fought for Kuro. He no longer fought for honor. He simply fought because he could. Isshin Ashina saw that fire in Wolf's eyes, the same fire that had once cut from the sculptor's arm. But this time, the fire was too great to extinguish. Shura had risen, and Ashina was only the beginning of his slaughter. But the story tells a different story. The canonical path leads us to kill our own father, a painful act of parricide. Wolf proved that he was no longer a mere tool, but a man with a will of his own.
Chapter 10: The History of the Twin Blades.
The journey ended in a field of silver flowers, the same place where Wolf lost his arm. Genichiro, devastated, made the ultimate sacrifice. He summoned his grandfather, the living legend, Isshin Ashina, the Sword Saint, back from the gates of death. This was the most epic and heartbreaking moment. Genichiro realized he wasn't strong enough to defeat Wolf. Using the Black Mortal Blade, he opened the gates of death by committing suicide, a ritual to summon Isshin Ashina back to his peak condition. He made himself a sacrifice so his grandfather could save Ashina. Wait. How exactly did Genichiro obtain the Black Mortal Blade? Here's the story. The Black Fushigiri, also known as the Open Gate, or Kaimon, is a sword even more mysterious than its twin, the Red Mortal Blade, which Wolf possessed. Unlike the Red Mortal Blade, which functions to sever immortality or take the dragon's tears, this sword, which is actually an heirloom of the Ashina family, can open the gates of the underworld through a ritual sacrifice of its owner's life. This sword can resurrect the dead at their peak, summoning Isshin Ashina, his deceased grandfather. Isshin Ashina kept this sword in a wooden box outside his tower room. If you examine the box at the beginning of the game, it's empty. It turns out that after he was defeated by Wolf on the castle roof, Genichiro, desperate for new power, learned of this sword from his grandfather's old notes or instructions from Tomoe, and managed to retrieve it when Isshin's health began to deteriorate and the castle was distracted by the Interior Ministry's invasion. The power of Kamo no Kami, or the worship of the god of death, requires a more gruesome condition than its counterpart. While the Red Mortal Blade requires its wielder to die for a moment to draw it, the Black Mortal Blade requires a ritual sacrifice of its wielder's life, called Kamo no Kami. In Japanese, this refers to the deity that connects the human world and the spirit world. This sword is not used to slay dragons, but to summon souls from the dead. the wielder must sacrifice their own body as a vessel. This is what Genichiro does at the end of the game. He slits his own throat to rebirth Isshin Ashina in his most physical condition.
Chapter 11. The Mysterious Mentor, Tomoe, the Lightning Dancer of Fountainhead.
There is a strong theory, supported by Emma's dialogue, that Tomoe once tried to find this black sword to aid Lord Takeru, the Divine Heir before Kuro. Tomoe knew of its existence, but she failed to use it because the black sword could only resurrect people, not end immortality. Lady Tomoe's origins are one of the greatest mysteries and most poetic elements of Sekiro lore. Although she never appears physically in the game, her influence is felt through the fighting techniques of Genichiro and Isshin Ashina. Tomoe herself is strongly believed to be from the Okami clan, an ancient group of female warriors who inhabited Fountainhead Palace and descended upon Ashina years before the game's story begins. She served as both mentor and protector to Lord Takeru. Isshin Ashina himself admitted to nearly being killed by Tomoe. He described Tomoe's fighting style as a dance so beautiful it was breathtaking. Tomoe was one of the few who could match Isshin Ashina's swordsmanship. He was deeply captivated by her fighting style, which seemed to dance in the depths of her gaze, which was like the bottom of the ocean. Isshin considered Tomoe's technique heretical, as it originated outside Ashina and utilized supernatural elemental powers. However, it was she who brought this lightning technique, or the way of Tomoe, to Ashina, which she then taught directly to Isshin's grandson, Genichiro. This is the reason why Genichiro was able to summon lightning from the castle roof. Her distinctive fighting style is described as a beautiful yet deadly dance, very similar to the Okami warriors we meet in Fountainhead. As a member of the Okami clan, she possesses a natural ability to manipulate lightning, known as the Lightning of Tomoe. Tomoe is no ordinary human. As an Okami, she shares a close blood relationship with the Divine Dragon. Just as Wolf protects Kuro, Tomoe also deeply loves Lord Takeru, who wanted to break his curse of immortality, immortal severance. To perform the ritual, she needed the red mortal blade, which at the time no one knew the whereabouts of this sacred weapon. Instead of finding the red sword, she found the black mortal blade about 20 years before the events of the game. It was also during this time that Lady Tomoe and her master, Lord Takeru, attempted a ritual to break immortality. Unfortunately, ancient records state that Tomoe failed because she couldn't find the location of the red mortal blade at Senpou Temple. This failure makes Tomoe most likely use the black mortal blade as a last resort, even though the black blade was not designed to break immortality purely, but for sacrifice. Tomoe's story ends tragically when she attempts a purification ritual to restore Lord Takeru's humanity or separate his immortality. But unfortunately, without the red mortal blade, the ritual fails, and she and Takeru only end up dying briefly without truly breaking the curse. Tomoe most likely died of grief or committed ritual suicide with Lord Takeru. Their graves are located side by side behind Ashina Castle, right where the Everblossom tree once grew. The same tree with the sacred cherry blossom branch they once brought from Fountainhead to plant behind Ashina Castle as a reminder of their hometown. Before Wolf and Kuro, there were Tomoe and Takeru, a female warrior who carried heavenly lightning on the tip of her sword. However, Ashina's history is a vicious cycle. Tomoe sought a way to free her master, but she found only failure. She left her lightning techniques to Genichiro, a beautiful legacy that only hastened Ashina's downfall. Tomoe was a mirror of the future for Wolf. If Wolf failed, he would end up like Tomoe, leaving a scar on Ashina's heart and passing on deadly techniques to a power-hungry disciple like Genichiro. After the rebellion, the Black Sword was kept safe by Isshin Ashina, but she chose not to use it because she hated unnatural immortality. But before she died, Tomoe passed on the knowledge of this sword to her disciple, Genichiro. For Genichiro, this sword was his final trump card. If he could not save Ashina alive, he would resurrect his grandfather, the Sword Saint, to do so. If Wolf's red sword symbolizes severance, then Genichiro's black sword symbolizes attachment. Wolf used his sword to let Kuro Eve as a human, while Genichiro used his to recall the souls of the dead to continue fighting for Ashina. Black and red, death and an eternity that refuses to end. As Genichiro stood in the field of silver flowers, he no longer held an ordinary sword. In his hand was Open Gate, a black blade capable of tearing apart the veil between life and death. He had lost as a human, so he chose to become a sacrifice. With a single cut to his neck, he summoned the most feared legend in Sengoku history, Isshin Ashina, the Saint Sword, risen from the blood of his own grandson. The Mortal Blade is a symbol of tragedy, a tool created for sacred rituals, but ultimately a weapon of slaughter in the hands of those who fear death or are obsessed with power.
Chapter Finale: The Honor of the Sword Saint.
Isshin is more than just a ruler. He is the personification of the Ashina spirit. Isshin, who actually loves Wolf, helps him under the alias of the Tengu of Ashina, who wants to stop the ambitions of his own grandson, Genichiro, who has lost his mind. Isshin, who died of illness, is forcibly resurrected in prime condition through the Open Gate ritual, Black Mortal Blade. He fights Wolf in the final battle, not out of revenge, but as a final tribute to the warrior he cherishes. For him, the sword is honesty. Even when he rises from hell to fight you, he does so with the smile of a proud master on his student. Hesitation is defeat, he says, as advice, not a threat. Isshin is the personification of martial perfection. To hesitate is to die. As swords clash and lightning strikes, we realize that Sekiro isn't just about killing bosses, it's about paying final respects to an era that will soon be lost to history. There are 4 endings, but the most tragic and beautiful is when Wolf becomes the next sculptor, or when he sacrifices his life so Kuro can live as a human. Like the cherry blossoms in the anime trailer, the beauty of life lies precisely in the possibility of death. Sekiro is a love letter to those who never give up. From the shadows of the past to the final blade's light, this story will continue to resonate. So, are you ready to die twice for true honor? So, what do you think? Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.